Hello there, I'm Cerise Fairfax, and this is Storytime. Welcome to my channel. Get ready for some unpredictable stories. If this is your type of video, then please go ahead and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that like button and the notification bell.
Hey guys, so have you ever heard about the old adage, faith versus fear? Well, a lot of us, we choose to be afraid more than anything, and that prevents us from having healthy relationships because we tend to make bad decisions based upon fear instead of faith. In this story today, the woman decided to work with fear as opposed to faith. Now let's get into the story today. We have Ronald and we have Rowene. Now, of course, we are saying the names to protect the people involved. So these are made up names. We have Ronald and we have Rowene. Now, Ronald and Rowene, they met right here in the Dominican Republic. Ronald, he is from Germany. Rowene, she is from America. They met here and they really started to feel each other out. They loved each other. They were like, you know what, I'm going to make this work. Now, Ronald, he never really went around and met a lot of the younger Dominican women here. It just wasn't his flex. He was always working. He actually came here to retire. He was a construction worker back in Germany. But when he got here, so many people started to ask him about jobs, just odd jobs and everything, that he decided that he was going to start a construction company here. Once he did that, he was so popular that he was once again working and there was no retirement. But Rowene, she was pretty cool with that because, you know, she was able to reap all the rewards. He put her up in a very nice villa, own private pool, beautiful decor, and she was able to sit around the pool during the day, or she could go out and do whatever she wanted to do, go get her Botox done, or she could go get fillers done, or her hair dyed, go to the salon, the spa, whatever she wanted to do, and he paid for everything. Now, she wasn't necessarily in retirement, but she was here. She used to be a teacher in America, and she came here on a sabbatical. And during her sabbatical, she decided to stay. And he said, stay, I will take care of you. So she didn't go back to work. She stayed here. So now, a couple of years later, they are very happy. He has never cheated on her. He doesn't lie to her. Whenever they do things together, they're always together. They're not that type of separate relationship. So why she did what she did, I think had a lot to do with fear and also a lot to do with control. Now let's get into the story. So Ronald was working on a big project, and it was one of the biggest projects that he has had since being in business here in the Dominican Republic. And so they actually finished the project beforehand, him and his crew. And it was payday, it was a Thursday, and he said to his crew, he's like, hey guys, you know, here's your pay, congratulations, you did so well, thank you so much. It feels great to be done the project beforehand, right? Because we all know those nightmares of projects not being finished on time and taking a longer time. So he was very proud of his crew. And the crew was like, and it was payday, so he paid them all out, and they're like, Hefe. Hefe is like a boss. They're like, Hefe, come to the bar with us. Come have a drink. You know, like we just want to celebrate. You never come to the bar with us, you know, but the project's done. Just come celebrate. And he's like, you know what? Why not? So he went to the bar with them because he wanted to buy them all the first round. And he wanted to make sure he was showing his appreciation. So he bought the first round. And then one of the other guys, someone from the crew was like, listen, I want to buy a round for everyone, Hefe, and you can't say no. So, you know, just have another drink. And he's like, all right. He said, but not a shot. I have to drive. I will have a cerveza. And they said, all right. So they gave him his cerveza. And of course, it doesn't take 5 minutes to drink a cerveza when you're talking. And they're talking shop and they're enjoying themselves. So now when they got off work, it was 5 o'clock. So now one of the other workers, he's like, let me buy the next drink. And the boss was like, why not? He was having a really good time, and it's only 3 drinks. And so he's like, all right, you know what? Yeah, give me another drink, and then I'm leaving. The third drink came, and he finished it within maybe about 15, 20 minutes. And then he said to his guys that he was leaving. Now, two of the other guys, they were like, hey, we know you're going that way. Do you mind giving us a lift home? He's like, absolutely not. Come on, I'll give you guys a lift home, no problem. So he gives them a lift home. Now, as he was driving them home, it wasn't dark yet. Around 7:30 it starts to get dark here, 8 o'clock, depending on what time of the year it is. But it wasn't dark yet. So he's driving and he's like, you know what? Let me just take you straight to your house instead of letting you out on the side of the road. Because the guy, if he got out on the side of the road, he'd have to walk a certain amount of distance as well on the dirt road going to his house. And the boss was like, why don't I just take you? So the boss starts to drive down the road, and as unfortunate events would have it, he rolled over some glass and popped his right hand front tire. Now, his employees jumped out right away and they start to examine the problem. And they're like, well, it's a flat tire. Do you have a spare? And he's like, yeah. So the boss went into the trunk and he's looking for the spare. He finds the spare and then he gives it to the guys, and the guys automatically start working on it. And he pulls out his cell phone because he's like, you know what? I better call Rowene. She's just going to be worried. So let me just let her know I'm on my way home. So he opens up his phone and he sees a text from her. I'm worried, all in caps and a lot of exclamation marks. And then there's another text and it says, where are you? Exclamation marks. You could tell she was angry, and he knew she wasn't worried. He knew she was angry. So he was like, all right, let me give her a shout. So he went to call her and he saw that he had some missed calls from her. And he's like, oh, great. She's going to, be out of her mind and over the edge when I get there. But let me just let her know I'm on my way. So he goes to call her and he can't because he's so far down the dirt road that he's not getting any type of service. So he gets home. Even before he gets home, there's no way they can fix the car because the bolts were all stripped and everything. And the workmen said, listen, Jefe, there's no way we're going to get this fixed today. The mechanic is closed. The mechanic closed at 5. And not only that, it's getting nighttime. It's getting late. So why don't you just get in my buddy's car? My buddy will drive you home. We will have the car fixed for you tomorrow morning. You come back and it will be all ready. And the boss, of course, he knows already that his employees are straightforward, trustworthy. He wasn't worried about leaving his car there. And he's like, absolutely no worries. I want to get home anyway. I'm hungry. I'm tired. So he took the lift home. And when he got into the house, he looked around and Rowene was sleeping. The house that they were living in was in a gated community in Puerto Plata. So, he was like, oh my gosh, okay, good, she's sleeping, no arguing. Let me make myself a sandwich. Let me go sit by the pool with a nice glass, nice drink, and let me just kick my feet up and relax. There was a nice breeze going on, and that's all he wanted to do. He made himself a sandwich. He went out to the pool area. He sat down on one of the loungers. He took a bite of his sandwich. He looked up at the pool, and all of his belongings were floating in the pool. Clothing and everything. Like everything. Even a pair of sunglasses. And he's like, what? Now remember, him and Rowene are together for a few years. But that's still his house. Those are still his belongings, And so he goes into the bedroom. He wanted to argue. He just wanted to wake her up and just say to her, who do you think you are? But he didn't. He went into the room and he, whether she was pretending to be asleep or not, he just let her be. And he walked down the front of the house, out the front of the gated community. He called over a motoconcho, which is a motorcycle taxi. And he took it to a hotel from Thursday until Sunday. Now, of course, he had to go home Sunday because he wanted to change his clothes for work the next day on the Monday. And he also felt like he was teaching her a lesson And, a few days of teaching her a lesson, not answering her phone calls and everything like that, he turned his cell phone off. He didn't even put it on. Even when he got into the house, he didn't even have it on yet. He just didn't want to argue. So he gets into the house, and when he gets in there, he sees her. She looks at him. He looks at her, and he's like, hey. And she didn't say anything. She just turned her head, and she went into the bathroom. And he didn't hear a peep out of her until he heard a knock on the door. He opened the door, and there's police officers. And the police officers are like, someone called the police. And she runs out of the bathroom, and she's holding her face, and she's crying, and she's screaming, and she's like, oh, he hit me, he hit me. Now, here in the Dominican Republic, you don't want to say someone hit you at all. Because when a man hits a woman, that's taken very seriously, not lightly. Okay, so when she said that, she already knew that that was going to be taken seriously, because whoever she called was her friend. That's a lot of the times how we do it here. You have a police officer that's a friend, you call them up. If they're not working, they're going to send a police car out for you. So that's what they did, what I'm assuming. And they took him away. They took him to Puerto Plata jail. Puerto Plata jail is definitely not like Toronto jail, where I'm from, or in America, where you're going to get a meal, where you're going to get a change of clothes. Even if it is just a jumper, you're still not going to get all that at all in Puerto Plata. It is made for people who are criminals, people who have done something bad. And this husband didn't do anything bad, nothing at all. So, he was like, wow. So he called his lawyer friend. His lawyer friend went and got him out. Nothing was asked, no more questions. He paid everything off to get out. And then he was like, you know what, just leave it alone. He filed for like a separation from her, which means if he's leaving, he has to give her some type of money. And so he gave her some money, and he left the house in his name. He wasn't ready to sell it. He didn't know if he was going to buy it, like buy her half, or if he was just going to sell the whole thing, right? But he knew for sure that he's just going to leave his name on the deed itself. So what he did was he actually moved on his partner's land. His partner has a big home, and he has what we would call like a mother-in-law suite, but it's a miniature casita, and it's like a one-bedroom house. And he went and he stayed there. And he let her stay in the villa until he figured out what he was going to do. But now Rowene, living off Ronald for so many years, she didn't have an income. She didn't have a job. Remember, she was like the trophy wife. And he was like, well, there's nothing I can do for you. And so she called the boss, she called the partner, and the partner said a flat out no, he's not helping her. And then so she kept on trying to call Ronald, but he changed his phone number. And the phone number that he used to have, he used it as a business number only. And he would just let his employees answer those messages, and then they would take those messages and they would give it to him. Well, one day she was crying on the WhatsApp answering message on a voice note, and she was crying and saying she had no money, and that she really needed some money because she's sad. And he said to her, all right, you know what, I'm going to buy you out of your portion of the home. I'm going to give you money for a flight to get back to America, and I'll pay your exit taxes. Now, when you're leaving here in the Dominican Republic, if you are not a resident, then when you're leaving at the airport, you pay overstay taxes. And that's what he told her he was going to pay. That was around $300. It's not a lot after you've been here for like maybe 3 years, 4 years or whatever, right? So he said to her, I'm going to pay all that for you, and you just go and leave me alone. And so she didn't go back to America. She took the money for the overstay taxes. She took the money for the flight. And she also took the money from half of the home, because remember, he bought her out. And she came right here to Sosua. And she was living it up. She was going into the bars, she was having a good time, and she was going all over the place until she met herself a young Dominican man. And he treated her mighty fine. And he said to her, you know, like, do you want to stay in Sosua your whole time, or do you want to go out and get to know the rest of the Dominican Republic? He's like, my family lives in Rio San Juan. It's only like 40 minutes away. We can go there and enjoy ourselves and really live a good life. And she was like, absolutely. So they went out there together and they moved to Rio San Juan, and she spent money like it was limitless. And she just was really foolish with her cash, not realizing that there was going to be a time to come where it was going to run out if she did not invest it wisely. So a time did come, and it ran out within a year's time. At that time, she moved out of the rental home that she was renting at the time, because she was renting a place in Rio San Juan, and that was not very expensive. And it was a furnished house, so she didn't have to pay for any furniture. All she had to pay was for her electricity and for her rent every month, which probably would have been in the numbers of maybe $450 a month. And so when you just got half of a home, and that's like $150,000 that she got cash pretty much and put in her bank account, and you're going to spend $150,000 in 1 year living out in Rio San Juan, you're spending a lot of money, and it's going somewhere. Where is it going? So she must have bought a lot of gifts for people, and then also did a lot of elbow tipping and stuff of that nature. After the year, she moved in with her boyfriend's mother. Now, her boyfriend's mother is easygoing. She's a country lady, and she doesn't speak any English at all. So she didn't mind that Rowene was moving in for a minute, temporarily, is what her son told her. And she knew Rowene for the past year, and she knew that Rowene is very generous, very kind, and she knows that Rowene loves her son. So she probably thought this was just a little dry spell for Rowene, and soon Rowene will be able to start producing some type of money again. So after 3 months, the mom was like, we can't be having this any longer. She said to her son, Rowene has to leave. She's not contributing, and she's not my daughter, right? The mom and Rowene were the same age, because the son was a lot younger than Rowene. And the mother's like, this is a woman that just, she wakes up in the morning and all she does is go on her cell phone. She's using the internet from the home. Not that it costs any more, but still, she's using the Wi-Fi on her cell phone, and she's not contributing to that. And the food that the family is eating, she's not contributing to absolutely nothing. So she thought that she was going to have a free ride because she was so generous for a year. But it doesn't go that way, because when people are hungry and people are hustling, everyone needs to contribute something. And so she had to leave. Her boyfriend said, you know what, Rowene, you have to go. My mom, she said that you are, not paying your way. So don't worry. I have a plan. Let's go back to Sosua. And she's like, all right. She packed up all her stuff and like her clothing and everything. And he took her back to Sosua. So when she got back here to Sosua, he said to her, hold on. I have to go get a few things done, and I have to get the people that, have the apartment for us and everything of that nature. So you just stay right here at this bar and wait for me to get back. And she waited and waited and waited, and he did not return. In the wee hours of the morning, she was still in a bar, right? Because some of the bars are open. And the bar owner said to her, like, hey, we're closing. And she's like, oh my gosh, is it just okay if I sit here on the patio? And I have all my bags here. I'm just waiting for my boyfriend to come back. And he's like, yeah, no problem, Rowene. It's okay, because he knew her from before anyway. And he knew, that she was probably stranded. And he knows how relationships go. So he's just said, stay right here. And, I'm going to lock up, but you know how to slip underneath the wooden part because it's outside patio. So he left, and she waited. And then the wee hours of the morning came, and she realized when the street started to get really dead, she realized there was no way that that boyfriend was going to go back. So she tried to contact him already so many times that her cell phone was dead. So she took all her belongings and she pushed it up as close as she could into the bar, and she grabbed her purse and she walked down to the beach. And she walked down to the beach and she slept on the beach loungers all night long. In the morning, very early in the morning, she walked back up to the bar. They gave her a free coffee and she sat there and she waited again. She charged her cell phone at the bar and she stayed there for the whole entire day. People that showed up throughout the day, a lot of retired people, they knew her and they bought her a couple of drinks, and she was just saying to them that she was a little down and out. Is it okay if they buy her a couple of drinks and she'll get them back? And of course they were like, of course, no worries. It's our pleasure. Like one big family. But then after the third day, she realized she needed to do something. There is no welfare for her in this country, in the Dominican Republic. She has no family here. And so she contacted her ex. And she told him the problems that she was in. Now, this is how I know about the story, because I was in Los Charamicos and she was hanging out by the Colmado in Los Charamicos. It's a Dominican neighborhood where I live. And she started to talk to me and she asked me for a couple of bucks. And she said she was hungry. So I gave her a couple of bucks to get some chicken. And I let her use my phone to call her ex. Now, her ex is pretty well known here when it comes to construction. So I have heard his name around the Bandit. I do a little bit of real estate here myself, and I help people find land and apartments and help them build. So his name has been thrown around quite a lot as a good person. And she contacted him from my cell phone. And he said to her, listen, and you could hear him through the phone as she's talking. And he's like, listen, Rowene, I can't do anything for you at all. As far as I'm concerned, for the past year, I thought you were back in America. I didn't have any clue that you were still in the Dominican Republic. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, the other day, I heard that people were seeing you on Pedro Clisante, and I was shocked that you had all your suitcases with you and everything. And she's like, it's all gone now. So apparently, during the 3 days, all her stuff was taken as well. And she doesn't know who took it or if someone even threw it out. She just doesn't know. So she told him all of this, and he said, Rowene, there's nothing I can do except just contact the Christian organization that I know that's in Santo Domingo. I know they're in town today because they're going around to a lot of the barrios to feed Dominicans. And maybe what you can do is connect with them, and they can take you back to Santo Domingo and give you shelter. I don't know what they'll do for you. He said, but that's the only thing. I'm not helping you any longer. And she was like, I didn't do anything to you. All I did was argue and fight with you. He said, you know what you did? You put an innocent person away, and you don't do that. And if you do that, what more would you do? He said, I'm not playing games with you. I'm not going to chill and sit around with you hoping that you're going to get better. I already had to deal with years of you being grouchy and sad all the time, and you're always negative. He's like, even the night when I was stranded, you didn't even let me get home and explain to you what was happening. And she was like, I thought you were out doing something. And he's like, you know that's not my nature. And she's like, can I just come see you, please? And he's like, absolutely not. Now, no, 100% no. Not just because you were laid up with another man for a whole year in real San Juan. He said, but because of what you did. That's the one thing you did. You should never, ever call the police on somebody who did nothing to you. He said, I could have got over the clothes in the pool. I could have got over all of that. But the last thing you did to me will be the last thing you've ever done to me. And that was it. Within an hour's time, the Christian organization was pulling up in a little van right here in Los Charamicos, and she hopped in with her purse, and that was it. I saw her last week at Playero. That's the supermarket. And she was just walking out of Playero. I was walking in, and she's like, hey. And I'm like, hey, how are you? And she's like, oh, I'm doing so good. You know, I'm serving the Lord. And I said, wow, you like it? And she's like, I love being a missionary. It's like a, blessing in disguise. I was like, wow, that's wonderful. And she's like, well, I'm living my life now. I don't feel as selfish. I'm really trying hard to get Ronald back. He still won't answer my phone calls and he still won't come to me or anything. She's like, and I understand, but I'm trying to live more with faith and not fear. She's like, everything that I did to him was all out of fear. I was afraid he was going to cheat. I was afraid he was out with another woman. And she's like, you know how it is in this town, young girls, and a lot of them are so beautiful. And I just thought maybe he found another one and he was taking me for a fool. And I was like, well, that's interesting. You learned a lot about yourself in this short amount of time. She was about 2 months that she was doing the missionary work. And she said, yes. So in the meantime, after she did go to Santo Domingo, it was a couple of weeks later when Ronald called my phone. And he was like, hey, this is the number where Rowing called me from. And I said, yes. And he's like, what's your name? And I said, Cerise. And he's like, oh, okay, I heard your name around before. And he's like, listen, I don't know what she said to you, but it's been playing on my mind because I know she's the type of woman that will lie and be deceitful for her own gain. He said, so I just want to give you my side of the story. And that's how I got his side of the story. And I was like, I I'm just here to listen. Because when he started to explain more and more, he's like, do you mind? Am I bothering you? Do you mind hearing this out? And I said, you know what? It's so funny that you would call me because I was thinking about the two of you just recently and how you guys are working out. And I said, not only that, I am a soul coach. I'm a life coach. I'm a mindset coach where people contact me all the time from all around the world. And I talk to them about certain things that are playing on their mind and certain choices that they've made that they cannot take back, but they do want to change their actions in other ways for the future. And I said to him, you just go ahead and tell me. I, I'm here. Tell me your story. And he said, I heard about your story times. I said, oh, yeah? And right now, I told him, and I'm like, don't worry. When someone tells me a story, I don't use their story unless they tell me they can. Like, unless I don't use anyone's story unless they tell me to, unless they directly tell me, use this as a story time. And he's like, really? You can use this one. Just don't say my name. He's like, or her name. But, he's like, use this one. And I told him, I'm going to be doing a series soon. As a matter of fact, guys, tomorrow I'm going to be doing a live to air. Well, that will be Wednesday. I'm going to be doing a live because right now, as I'm taping this, it's Tuesday. And so tomorrow's going to be Wednesday when I'm having the meeting. And I'm going to be doing the live to air at 4:30, 5 o'clock Dominican time. And I'm going to be interviewing a lot of actors. We're having a meeting and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk. So I'm going to go to a live to air so all you guys can actually just sit wherever you're at around the world and watch the meeting and see what actors we're going to have. And hey, if you ever want to come and be an actor on the show, come along. We're going to be calling it Society and it's going to be based upon story time. So please subscribe, check out my Storytime playlist, and then see what story time speaks to your heart. And when you're here, you can come on set and come be an actor. You don't need any acting experience, and you also don't need to speak any English. You can even come and be a background actor. Which brings me to my next point. If you are a writer or a producer, you can be a writer or a producer from wherever you are around the world. We're making it easy for everyone because we want everyone to be in on this project. All right, guys, thank you so much. And remember, if anything about this story rings true, it should be about fear versus faith. I think at the end of the day, when you have someone that you love, and even if you do feel like they're cheating on you, it is so important to ask them what's up. Don't get angry. Don't be afraid that they're doing something wrong to you. Just have faith. Sometimes when we use fear, we make things even worse because our fear leads to thoughts then feelings, and then negative actions, and we make things worse in the end. But when you work with faith, then you enter a shelter of strength, of personal strength. And you say to yourself, is this really worth getting upset about? Do I really need to argue, fight, and holler right now? And chances are you won't need to. And even if the situation does warrant you to argue, fight, and holler, where is that going to get you at the end of the day? Nowhere. Sometimes it's best to keep the peace, be calm, collected, and cool, and allow nature to take its course. And always remember, this too shall pass. Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Cerise. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe, hit that like button, and the notifications right here. Thank you so much. Mwah. I'll see you on Thursday for Living Good. Living Good is my television talk show here in the Dominican Republic, and it's all about relocation and real estate and just stories from people who are visiting here or living here. And then I'll also see you on Friday for Fitness Fridays, where we do my weigh-in, because I'm trying to lose 50 pounds, and oh gosh, it's getting easier. I'm just goshing. It's just that I haven't worked out as much as I should have worked out, but I have moved to intermittent fasting, and that's been pretty cool. So also, we are going to have Storytime Saturday, this Saturday. Oh, the Storytime is going to be pretty freaky. And then, of course, we're going to have Sosua Sundays, where we're going to do an update, and we're going to talk about what is going on Playa Sosua, because the construction is going to start soon enough. And for those of you who don't know about what's going on in the construction, check out my playlist called Sosua Changes. All right, guys, you take care of yourself and make sure that you treat yourself good today. Bye. Mwah, mwah, mwah. This is Relationship Wednesdays.
Speaking about relationships, take a look at these distant bracelets. They're for men and women. For those of you who have a loved one somewhere and you just want to be reminded of them every day and you want to share something the same. They are semi-precious gems. They're not plastic. They are real stone. And they're also stretchy so they can fit any wrist. They're wonderful to show your love and sentiment. Please contact the number on the screen via WhatsApp and make your order today.